Welcome back to the kitchen at Andersen Acres. Today we're having a grand old time making one of my favorite recipes. We are making pan-fried parsley potatoes. Ignore the eggs happening over there. That's not part of this recipe, but still, it's fun. So, the trick to this recipe is to have somebody peeling and chopping potatoes behind you. That's Tristan behind me is peeling and cubing potatoes. I also have Rowan, who is coming to help me. Now, what I need to do is get a measuring cup, and I need to get some water. So I have to mix up some chicken broth. You're going to want to mix up 1 cup of chicken broth. Now, that chicken broth can be powdered that you mix. It can also be from a carton in the fridge. It can be a chicken broth you made yourself. It doesn't really matter. You could also use a vegetable broth, or you could use for example, a beef broth. You could use any broth you really like. There is no protein in this recipe, so we're not going to worry about it too much. So I'm just squishing a cube into some water so it can start dissolving. So what we are going to do here is I do have Tristan cubing potatoes behind me. Rowan is going to get me the garlic powder and the onion powder. And we are going to start in a fairly large skillet. Okay, so peeling and cubing potatoes is happening behind me. And we are now going to turn on our skillet to just under medium heat. And now you're going to add to that skillet as it heats a little bit of any kind of fat you like. You can use an oil, you can use a butter. Beware, butter's probably going to burn, but you can use it. So just beware. You could use tallow, not tallow, you can use lard. Tallow wouldn't work very well, but you can use whatever you've got, okay? You can use whatever you've got, whatever you like. I'm just using a little bit of oil. So what we're going to do is we are going to let that heat for just a minute. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch it heat up. That's boring as heck. So I am going to come back. I'm going to pause the recording, come back when the oil is heated. All right, our oil is fairly warm. So you can either use actual chopped garlic, or you can just use garlic powder. I'm using garlic powder because we have people with texture sensitivities, so we're just using powder. But you can use actual garlic and onion instead of the powder. It doesn't make that much of a difference except for the texture. Don't go too heavy on the onion if you don't like onion. So be gentle with that. So if you're using actual garlic and onion, you would let it kind of sit in the oil and kind of bubble around until it got kind of translucent and mostly cooked. Because we're using powders and we don't have to worry about that, we're just going to make sure it's evenly distributed in the oil. And yes, you do need a couple tablespoons of oil. Then now my broth is not finished dissolving, mostly because I used cold water and I should have used warm. But now we're going to put broth in here, about a cup. 1 cup of whatever broth you're using, vegetable, chicken, beef, it doesn't matter. It literally does not matter which broth you use. Go with the flavor profile you like the best. Dump your broth in here. And now we are going to warm that up. We want that to come to a boil, okay? We are going to wait for that to boil. So we're going to turn the heat up, let that boil. Again, I think probably I'm just going to time-lapse this part because that's a lot of waiting around. So we're just going to start a time-lapse. All right, we're going to stop the time-lapse here, and we are going to dump roughly 2 pounds of chopped potatoes, just cubed. They don't have to be super small. Dump them into your broth. Give them a bit of a swirl. Get all of them in that broth. And now what you want is you want your broth to return to a boil. Adding the cold potatoes drops the heat really, really fast, okay? Because they're cold potatoes going into a hot liquid. So you're definitely going to want to let that come back to a boil. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to let that come back to a boil. Then we're going to cover it. So we're going to time lapse this part again because we want that broth to return to a boil. All right, it's starting to boil. Give these potatoes another kind of swirl around to make sure none of them are stuck together. Then we're going to put a lid on and we're going to set a 10-minute timer. Okay, I'm using a clear lid so you'll be able to see because again, I'm going to time lapse. 10-minute timer, then go. All right, that's 10 minutes. So we're going to take the lid off. We don't need the lid anymore. The potatoes should be tender by now. Whoa. So this is a spoon. That's not going to help me. I'm just looking for a fork. All the forks are gone. All the forks are gone. Found it. So you just want to make sure that your potatoes are at least mostly cooked. So your fork should be able to pierce them. Okay, choose bigger potatoes. So, obviously a little tiny one like this guy is going to pierce really easily. So what you want to do is pick larger chunks. That's not a larger chunk, but pick a larger chunk and make sure your fork can go into them. I'm trying not to split them. So now what we want to do is we want to I'm going to switch from a wooden spoon to a spatula. But what you want to do is find the spatula I want first of all. I can't find the one I want, so I'll use this one. But what you want to do is first kind of just get them moving. And what we're going to do now I think I forgot to mention, you have to reduce this to a simmer, right? You have to reduce this to a simmer and let it simmer for 10 minutes. I think I didn't mention that. You don't want to be on a high boil for 10 minutes. But what we're going to do now is we are going to add a couple more ingredients. This is already going to be really great and flavorful. Okay, so we don't want to add too much. But we are going to add a chunk of butter. We're going to add a chunk of butter. It's 2 to 4 tablespoons. You don't need a ton, right? Just some butter. And then we're going to add salt and pepper to taste. So I like a lot of pepper. Not everybody likes as much pepper as me. So I'm going to put a medium amount of pepper that amounts to maybe half a teaspoon. I would like 4 teaspoons, but people are not me. And then I'm going to put salt in that amounts to about a teaspoon of salt. Again, this is to taste. How much salt do you want? How much pepper do you want? And then we're just going to let these cook down until the rest of the broth has evaporated. That's why we have lifted the lid. And until that butter has melted. And until they're slightly crisp from the pan. Again, let's time lapse it. All right, now I think I probably didn't mention that you actually have to turn the temperature back up, okay, if you want any type of crispness. Now, how much crispness you want is entirely up to you, because what's going to happen is they're already cooked, okay? They've cooked nicely in their broth, which kind of boils down into a sauce. So you kind of decide for yourself how crisp you want them. You want them crisper? Leave them in the pan longer. But I'm going to take them off the pan. And before I do that, I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of parsley. And then we're just going to come in here, mix that in a little bit. And then we are going to plate one up and see how it looks and how it tastes. And just like that, you have pan-fried parsley potatoes. They're really flavorful because they've been cooked in that broth. You can add more parsley, less parsley. You can change up the herbs if that's what you want. And you can change up the broth to your heart's content. Vegetable, chicken, beef, whatever broth you happen to have on hand and whatever flavor profile you enjoy. Because it's a really adaptable recipe, really easy. You know that it's not going to be undercooked because you're boiling the potatoes in the broth first. Then that broth reduces to kind of a sauce. They're delicious, fun, and simple. Add some bacon bits on top, and you're ready to go. My son likes to add eggs. Anyway, that is about it for us here today at the kitchen at Andersen Acres. I hope you enjoyed making pan-fried parsley potatoes. They're not difficult. They just take a little while. We'll see you tomorrow.